Hello and welcome to Helping Other People Excel. Our show is about hope, H-O-P-E, helping other people excel. And we're so glad you could join us today. We're really happy to be here and in your homes. And hopefully we'll have some good stuff for you today again and help inspire you and to encourage you and bring hope into your lives as well. Before I get started, of course, I want to thank our fine hosts, WCET Television here in Hudsonville, and all of their fine staff that helps bring this show together and make it all possible. Also, I'd like to thank Heaven is My Home, Pastor Gary Myers, who's been influential in getting me this little spot. I appreciate all of his help there. He's out today gathering up some funds for turkeys that he donates every year at Thanksgiving time. And then Pamper Me Naturally. They've got a nice line of hand lotions and soaps, all natural. Their little quote is, if your skin could talk, it would say, "Pamper me naturally." And you can find them at pampermenaturally.com. Also, Perry's Place for fine herbs, teas, and more at 90 North Main Street in Cedar Springs. He carries a lot of nice teas and herbs, but he also does massage therapy. He has essential oils that are good for your various health needs. And so in addition to trying to encourage you emotionally, which is what we do here on Hope, Helping Other People Excel, we also want to encourage you to help yourself excel health-wise and physically by meeting up with our fine sponsors there. So to start out the show today, I'm going to start it with the usual little quote from the unknown monk in 1100 AD. Said, "I wanted to change the world." And he said, I wanted to change the world when I was a young man, and I tried really hard to change the world, but I found that it was a big chore. So I decided maybe I could change my country, and so I got involved in local politics. It's my own paraphrased version. And I tried to change my country, my nation, and he said I worked hard at that for a while, and soon I decided that maybe it'd be better to try a little smaller project, so I decided to change my community. And I worked hard at changing my community, but alas, it seemed like it was not working either. And so I decided that maybe I'd work on changing my family. And so in my older age, I worked hard on changing my family, and I had little success at that. And so finally I decided that I needed to change myself. And so I worked hard at changing myself. And in changing myself, I realized that had I have changed myself early in life, I would have indeed changed my family and made an impression there, who would have then went out and impacted their community, and we would have made a change in our cities and towns, and ultimately then that would have changed our nation and ultimately changed the world. So this unknown monk is saying, hey, I kind of went about this backwards. I needed to start with myself in the first place, change myself, and by changing myself, I'd see that the rest of the world would indeed change. And of course, there's that little quote that says, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So we can really see how just changing our own perspective can make a big difference in how we see things, if nothing else. If we don't actually change the world, but maybe only end up changing how we view the world, sometimes that can make a huge difference as well. So anyway, I've got a nice story for us today that I came across while I was going through my weekly reading, and so I'm going to read that for you today. I oftentimes rather try and tell you the story rather than read it, because I think it adds a little more personal touch, but this one was well written and a really good story, really touched my heart, and I hope it will inspire you in the same way. I'm going to try and tell you the story or read you the story without any lump in my throat, tears in my eyes, but I'm not making any promises because it's a really touching story. And so it's called The Last Cab Ride. Oh, I guess I probably should get into kind of skipped over what we talked about last week there. Last week we had a little talk and discussion about a quote by William Shakespeare that said, "There's nothing either good or bad that thinking makes it so." And how we discussed about how our thinking and our thought processes can actually change and create or cause the very things to happen in our lives, either good or bad. And Earl Nightingale, of course, talks about that in The World's Strangest Secret in the World. where he says that what we plant in our mind is what grows, and what our mind will return to us in multiplied content. So if we plant good things in our thoughts, then we get good things back in our lives. And if we find bad things in our life, plant bad things in our minds, then we get bad things back. So if you're not liking the way your life is going, maybe it's time to change those thought processes, which kind of goes along with the poem from The Unknown Monk. And then Dr. Norman Vincent Peale said, "You are not what you think you are, but what you think you are." And, I thought that went along so well with that our thoughts really do so much to influence what happens in our lives and influence others. And, I'm really finding that to be true myself. That's part of why I'm here with this show. It's things that I've been learning recently after 50 some years. I'm not going to tell you how many exactly, but I've learned some things that I really wish I could have learned years ago when I was just a young man, and I would have changed my thoughts back then so that ultimately I would have had a bigger impact. But I'm going to do what I can with what I've learned now. Never too late, correct? Although that's not necessarily always true. A lot of times it's never too late to start. We can always get started at some time anyway. So anyway, going on to our story called The Last Cab Ride. It's a story about a cab driver who picked up a lady late at night. It was his last fare of the night, and I'll just go ahead and get right into it. I arrived at the address and honked the horn. After waiting a few minutes, I honked again. Since this was going to be my last ride of the shift, I thought about just driving away, but instead I parked the car and walked up to the door and knocked. "Just a minute," answered a frail elderly voice. I could hear something being dragged across the floor. After a long pause, the door opened, kind of like the one I had to change the page. Long pause. The door opened. A small woman in her 90s stood before me. She was wearing a print dress, a pillbox hat with a veil pinned on it, like somebody out of a 1940s movie. By her side was a small nylon suitcase. The apartment looked as if no one had lived in it for years. All of the furniture was covered with sheets. There were no clocks on the walls, no knickknacks or utensils on the counters. In the corner was a cardboard box filled with photos and glassware. Would you carry my bag out to the car?" she said. I took the suitcase to the cab and then returned to assist the woman. She took my arm and we walked slowly to the curb. She kept thanking me for my kindness. "Oh, it's nothing," I told her. "I just try to treat my passengers the way I would want my mother to be treated." "Oh, you're such a good boy," she said. When we got in the cab, she gave me an address and then asked, "Could you drive through downtown?" "It's not the shortest way," I answered quickly. "Oh, I don't mind," she said. "I'm in no hurry. I'm on my way to hospice." I looked in the rearview mirror. Her eyes were glistening. "I don't have any family left," she continued in a soft voice. "The doctor says I don't have very long." I quietly reached over and shut off the meter. "What route would you like me to take?" I asked. For the next 2 hours, we drove through the city. She showed me the building where she once worked as an elevator operator. We drove through the neighborhood where she and her husband had lived when they were newlyweds. She had me pull up in front of a furniture warehouse that had once been a ballroom where she had danced as a little girl. Sometimes she'd ask me to just slow down in front of a particular building or corner, and then she would sit and stare into the darkness and say nothing. As the first hint of sun was creasing the horizon, she suddenly said, "I'm tired. Let's go now." We drove in silence to the address she had given me. It was a low building, like a small, convalescent home with a driveway that passed under a portico. 2 orderlies came out to the cab as soon as we pulled up. They were very solicitous and intent, watching her every move. They must have been expecting her. I opened the trunk and took the small suitcase to the door. The woman was already seated in a wheelchair. "How much do I owe you?" she asked, reaching into her purse. "Oh, nothing," I answered. "You have to make a living too," she said. "There are other passengers," I responded. Almost without thinking, I bent and gave her a hug. She held on to me tightly. "You gave an old woman a little moment of joy," she said. "Thank you." I squeezed her hand and then walked into the dim morning light. Behind me, a door shut. It was the sound of a closing life. For the rest of that day, I could hardly talk. What if that woman had gotten an angry driver? Or one who was impatient to end his shift? What if I had refused to take the run, or I had honked once and then driven away? On a quick review, I don't think that I have done anything more important in my life. We're conditioned to think that our lives revolve around great moments. But great moments often catch us unaware, beautifully wrapped in what others may consider a small one. It's been said that people may not remember exactly what you did or what you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. You know, I think about that story and that older lady and how many times we've often gone through our lives and maybe unawares didn't realize that maybe we were entertaining this angel type situation where this person was in need, or you know how many times we may have been impatient, in hurried in traffic, maybe behind schedule for something that we thought was important, and how many times maybe we might pass up on an opportunity such as this cab driver had. And you know, I believe that we're really ultimately put here, and our real purpose in life, what we're put here for, and the meaning of life. Come here and let me tell you. It's to help other people. It's to be there for others. And that, I believe, is what we're all here for. And if we're not doing that, then we're really missing our calling. We're missing our purpose. And we're not fulfilling our own lives, not to mention the lives of others. But how rewarding it is when we do take that moment like this cab driver did, and we go that extra mile. We go up to the door after we've honked, and we knock until somebody answers. And then we help them with their suitcase or their luggage or whatever it is that they're in need of at that time and at that moment. And then we go the extra mile. We turn off the meter. We don't charge anything for what we've done. We drive them around town for the rest of the night and just help them remember and help them review their lives. I'm struck by the way this man said that he reflects back on it, and it was probably one of the most important things he'd ever done in his life. I think back to the times when I was with my elderly grandparents and spent time with them, and the things I learned from them, and had I have not spent that time with them, the things I would have missed out on. I'm thinking now of my mom's mother, Vivian, and she used to stay with us for a period of time when I was a young man, and she had this little poem that she taught me, and I'll always remember it. She had a couple of them, actually. The first one said, "My, oh my, what a flower I be. Two young maids came a-courting me," or two old maids came a-courting me. One was blind and the other couldn't see. My, oh my, what a flower I be. And, you know, at the time I chuckled a lot, but, you know, it was a poem that she remembered from days gone by as a young lady. And had I have not spent that time with her, I would have totally missed out on, the joy of that little poem, you know. And it's not a big thing, but it's special to me. And many of the other things that I learned from spending time with Grandma, she was a old gal and she was blind. She couldn't see anymore herself. Not that she had old maids courting her. But at any rate, she really passed on some good things to me. And if I wouldn't have had the time, if I wouldn't have had the patience to sit there with her and learn these poems. The other one was kind of a cute one too. She said, "Over in the meadow in the old beehive lived Mother Honeybee and her little honeys 5. Buzz, said the mama bee, we buzz, said the 5, and they buzzed and they hummed in the old beehive." So, you know, those were memories that Grandma passed on to me, and by my being there, I allowed her to relive those experiences, but how much of a pleasure and a blessing it was to me to do that. And many instances I can think of times where I took a little extra time and spent time with an elderly person or a sick person or somebody that had a hard time. Maybe they were handicapped in some way. And how much of a blessing that I got from that, not just for them. And I believe that today in our busy hustle and bustle of our world, that we so oftentimes are missing out on that kind of thing ourselves. We're not learning the things that we used to learn from the elderly, who used to be revered with great wisdom because they had information that needed to be passed on to the young ones. And if the young ones don't get that, how they'll make so many more mistakes and have to struggle and work through life so much harder because they missed out on those opportunities. So at any rate, I think that it's important that we keep those things in mind, that we're not just doing that for others. We're not just doing it to help them. We're doing it for our own benefit and for our own experiences and for our own blessings. And so we need to be careful to take that extra time and spend it with others to be a help to them. One of the things I've been learning more recently is how it's important to love other people, and they've told me that nobody cares what you think until you show that you cared. And I think that's just an amazing thing as well, that when we show others that we care, when we truly care for what they do and for what they are and who they are, I really think that it does so much more, has so much more effect on the people. We got to remember to be really truly caring and helpful with others. So, as we go through life, if we go that extra mile for others and we help them with what their needs are, and we just give that little extra of ourselves and we put that little bit more out there, it sets examples for those around us that they too will desire to do the same thing, and they too maybe will then reap a blessing that they would have missed otherwise because they passed up on an opportunity to help somebody. And so anyway, that was kind of my little story, and I really enjoyed it when I read it. How great moments often catch us unaware, beautifully wrapped in what others would consider a small moment. And so we got to really pay attention to those small moments. And I've had a lot of those kind of things happen as well, where something insignificant you thought at the time really just turned out to be way more significant than we realized. And had we have not followed up on it, we would have missed that. And how many times our paths are guided to a spot where we can help somebody, and it just put us there at the right time in the right place. I'm reminded of something that actually happened to me, that I was at a customer's working at one time. I used to do computer work and telephone work, and it happened right here in this community, actually, in Hudsonville, Jenison area. And I went out to call on this customer, and I got finished with my job a little bit early, and so I had some spare time. So I thought, I'm going to call on a dear friend of mine who lost her husband not too long ago, and her daughter were living together. And I thought, I'm going to go say hi to them and talk to them for a little bit and see how they're doing. And so I left my job, and I thought, I think I'll stop and grab some pizza first. So I stopped and I grabbed some pizza. Well, it just seemed like the pizza place was really slow, and it took a long time for them to get everything done. But I was patient, and I waited, and eventually people were getting waited on ahead of me, and finally it got to be my turn, and I grabbed my pizza and I headed over to their house. And we had a nice visit that day, and we sat there at the table and ate our pizza and talked, and we talked for a while. And then finally it was time for me to go, and I decided to head down the road. And so I started driving down the road, and doggone it if there wasn't road construction. And I thought, well, that's kind of annoying, you know. Now I got to take a roundabout way and get on at a different exit and on the highway. And so sure enough, I took this roundabout way and getting ready to get onto this exit, and I was waiting at a stoplight for it to turn green, and I noticed that there was a pickup truck ahead of me, and it had a great big trailer on the back of it with a lot of stuff on it, boards and bricks and stuff like that, and it was loaded pretty heavy. And as the light turned green, we all took off to go onto the highway exit, and I noticed that this truck kind of swerved as it went through the intersection, and I saw some sparks fly from underneath, and I realized that he had kind of bottomed out his trailer tongue, and you know, that happens, it's no big deal. But then I also realized that the swerve meant that there was something more there, and as I went by, I tried to kind of watch, and he pulled off to the side, and sure enough, I could see that his trailer tongue had broke. And I was in a work truck, a big heavy van with a trailer hitch on the back of it, but as I went by, I noticed that this truck was a really unusual blue color, and I thought, boy, I know somebody with a truck that's got a blue color like that, but you know, they don't live anywhere down here near Hudsonville, so it's probably not them. And so I kept going, but then I thought, well, you know, I'll call my friend and find out, because it was her dad and that had that blue truck. And so I called her, and I was talking to her a second, and she said, just a minute. She said, my dad is ringing in. Can I put you on hold? And I said, well, find out if he's lost his trailer hitch and, you know, and is stuck down in Granville, Hudsonville. And so she said, okay. And so she put me on hold, and she come back a few minutes later, and she said, well, meanwhile, I turned around, and I was headed back to that exit to see if I could help that fella, because I was pretty sure by this point that it was him. And sure enough, it turned out it was him, and you know, so I was able to hook right up. We disconnected the trailer from his truck, and turned out he was taking those supplies up to his daughter's house, who was my friend, all the way up by Sand Lake. And I just was there at the right moment at the right time, and I happened to see this thing break. And I mean, he didn't sit there more than 10 minutes, and I was there. We hooked up the trailer to my van, and I was going that way anyway, so I pulled the trailer up to Sand Lake instead, and he followed me in his truck with the broken hitch. But of course, the broken hitch didn't make it not function. But you know, I thought about that day, and I thought, you know, I got out of work early from that job, so I didn't go home then. And then I delayed and went to get pizza, and that got delayed. And then I went and visited my friends, and I stayed as long as I was supposed to stay, not any longer, not any less. And then I, you know, got this detour where I had to go and get on at a whole different exit. And, you know, God kind of pointed out to me that during that course of that day, my whole entire day had been planned, had been laid out by Him. Every little step that I was willing to take, I was willing to listen, and I did what I was guided to do. And every little step was all around putting me at that right place at that right time, where I was right behind that truck when he, you know, had his failure of his trailer hitch. And it was just kind of pointed out to me how that had happened, and I thought, wow, you know, that's really amazing. And then I got to thinking about it, and I thought, how many other times does God do this kind of thing for us, where He puts us in the right place at the right time? And what about all the orchestration that it took to get us at that right place at that right time? All of the manipulations, the road construction, the slow vehicles in front of us, the slow pizza place, whatever it is, you know. And so oftentimes we sit there and we're impatient in our chairs, and we want things to go faster, and why is this going like this? And you're angry with the traffic because it slowed down. And you know, so many people have talked about accidents that they missed because of a slow vehicle or a train that went through that kept them longer than they should have, and they were in a hurry and they were late, and had that train not gone through, they would have been in an accident for certain, because it happened just ahead of them. And so, you know, I was just thinking about all that, all those things. A lot of things go through your mind when you read a good story like that. And obviously for me, I do a lot of thinking. I do a lot of reading. But, you know, God does that for people, and not only does he use us to do those things, which he did for me and this gentleman, but he also uses others like that for us. And so I really want to encourage you today that, you know, if there's some kind of a delay going on in your life, if things aren't going quite the way you think they should, maybe you're impatient or upset and you think things are going bad, it's time to look for that silver lining in the cloud and realize that, you know what, there's probably a reason for this. And if I take a second and look around me, I may find out what that reason is, and we'll get it done, you know. And instead of getting upset and getting your blood pressure up, which doesn't help you or anyone else either, but you instead stay calm, accept it for what it is, look for the blessings, not only for yourself but to others. And then you'll receive a blessing even if your purpose is to help others. And helping them, like this gentleman helped the old lady, the cab driver, you know, he received a blessing himself that he may never really fully understand the significance of it or the true benefit that he received from that day. But at any rate, I just wanted to share that story with you and encourage you. Sometimes my stories are more about getting you pumped up and excited, and other times it's just more introspective of, you know, trying to learn a lesson from someone else's experiences. And of course, that's the best way to do. That saves us from having to make the same mistakes that they made. So I hope that this was a blessing for you today, and that you did get something good out of it. I hope that it touched your heart. And if so, our website is located at the bottom of our page. You can go there and look at our products sometimes and find some of the books that we talk about on here. Also, the email address is here. You can drop me a line and tell me what you got out of today's message. Hopefully, like I said, it blessed your heart. Or you can give me a call. The phone number is 616-799-0517. The email address is jim.pate. That's P as in Peter, A-T-E, like pate without the liver, at gmail.com. And for those of you that maybe aren't watching your screen, can't write this all down. So, but anyway, enjoyed spending the time with you today and coming into your homes. I appreciate you tuning in to me so that we can bless your lives and your hearts. And I sure look forward to seeing you again next time. We're on twice a week here from WCET in Granville, Hudsonville. Also, you can look for our YouTube channel now. I've archived all of our shows so far. You just go on to YouTube and search for Jim Pate and then Helping Other People Excel, and you'll be able to find my channel and a list of our videos there so that you can maybe get caught up on some of them that you missed. But feel free to drop us a line. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you once again for letting me come into your home and be a blessing to you today. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Same time, same channel, as they used to say. And as we go here, my usual quote from Christopher Robin, who said to Winnie the Pooh, "There is something that you must always remember. You are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think." Have a good day, have a good week, and God bless you.
Because you believed in me,
I can believe in you.
I can believe in me.
Because you pushed me to be better.
You pushed me to be better.
I learned to push myself.
myself.
Because you showed me respect.
Respect.
I respect others.
I respect myself.
Because you showed me a place.
I can use everything you taught me.
I found my place.
I have found my place.
This is my place.
For all the young men and women in the United States Air Force, there was one person who showed them the possibilities and opened the door. To the teachers, counselors, ministers, and moms and dads who helped a young man or young woman discover that the greatest force of all is inside of themselves, we thank you. And more importantly,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
they thank you.